After I went to work in place of my twin brother, I started acting arrogantly and doing whatever I wanted in the company. Later, when he returned to work, within an hour, he frantically texted me, "Bro, what did you do to our cold-blooded female boss?" Today, she smiled at me as soon as she saw me. Even more terrifying, she pulled my pants down in the elevator. "Bro, reply to me quickly, she just called me to her office. Am I going to be taken advantage of?" My brother texted me today saying, "Bro, I injured my leg playing basketball and can't go to work. Our company is preparing to lay off people, and I can't afford to take leave now. Can you go to work for me for a few days?" I refused. "No way. What if we get found out?" He said, "We won't. We are identical twins and look exactly the same. Just pretend to be me. I'll do the work at home, and you can just turn it in." His big, round eyes looked at me expectantly. I couldn't refuse that look. The next day, as soon as I arrived at my brother's company building, 2 girls screamed at me, "Sebastian, when did you get rich enough to drive a Range Rover? And why aren't you wearing glasses today? You look completely different. Did you join some makeover show? You've turned into a hot rich guy overnight." Sebastian is my brother's name. I used to be called Sincere, but I changed my name to Sincere. I recognized these 2 girls from the photos I saw last night. They were my brother's colleagues. "Really? Thanks," I replied, walking with them towards the elevator. As we waited for the elevator, I heard footsteps behind us. Turning around, I saw a stunningly beautiful woman with a cold demeanor walking at the front of a group of people. She had a tall, elegant figure, wearing a black Hepburn-style dress that accentuated her clean, sleek lines. Her eyes, slightly upturned, glanced at me fleetingly, exuding an air of aloofness and unattainability, yet irresistibly attracting attention. "Good morning, Vicky." Everyone greeted her in unison, then turned their attention to me. So this was Victoria, the president of the Lou Group. I unabashedly scrutinized the woman in front of me, my eyes falling on the pearl necklace at her neckline. "So white," I muttered to myself. The next second, she covered her chest, frowned, and rolled her eyes at me. "No, that's not what I meant," I quickly clarified. The elevator arrived, and she stepped into the president's private elevator. Just as the doors closed, I felt her glance at me again, with the corners of her mouth slightly upturned. My heart skipped a beat. I must admit, her smile was enchanting. I followed the 2 female colleagues to my brother's office floor. Just as I sat down, a middle-aged man threw a file onto my desk and said, "You're presenting at this afternoon's new product seminar. Here's the material." My brother never mentioned he was responsible for any seminar. Confused, I asked, "Why me?" The man explained, "It was originally Ethan's responsibility, but his wife is having a baby, so he's on leave. You've worked on the product design before. What's the problem?" Someone tried to defend me. "Sir, Sebastian hasn't been involved with this project for a long time. He doesn't know the details. Maybe Ethan's assistant should do it." The man snapped. "Didn't I give him the materials? If you're so capable, why don't you do it?" I casually flipped through the materials and found them familiar. They were similar to the products submitted to our group by companies seeking collaboration. No problem. When my colleague tried to argue further, I stopped him and said, "It's fine, I'll do it." After the man left, my colleague warned me, "He's setting you up. If you make a mistake in a meeting attended by the higher-ups, he'll use it as an excuse to get you fired." I asked, "Why is he targeting me?" He replied, "Why else? The company is laying off staff. He's been given a quota, and our department needs to cut 1 person. His cousin who got in through his connections is the least competent. If he can get you fired, his cousin gets to stay." "I see." I spent the entire morning meticulously reviewing the product materials, but found the information incomplete. When I asked the manager for more, he impatiently dismissed me, saying, "That's all there is. Figure it out yourself." By noon, everyone had gone for lunch. I called my brother. "Why am I responsible for the new product seminar?" "If you can't handle it, should I come over?" he asked. "How would you get here in a wheelchair? Besides, if you came, our ruse would be exposed," I replied. "What should we do then?" he asked, feeling defeated. Don't worry, I've reviewed the materials. Many companies have sent me proposals for similar products. I can handle it. But the manager didn't give me all the information. Can you ask the original person in charge to send it to me? 10 minutes later, my brother sent me all the necessary information. I skipped lunch and continued to immerse myself in the proposals. As I was engrossed in my work, a voice suddenly came from behind. I never noticed how good your taste in clothes is. This suit looks great on you. I turned around and saw. It was Victoria. This time she was alone, without the usual entourage. I didn't get up but turned my swivel chair to face her, leaned back, stretched my legs and crossed my arms, supporting my chin with one hand as I admired her. I teased, "Your sense of style isn't bad, but the neckline is a bit high, hiding your great figure. However, it suits your temperament." She laughed and said, "Are you new here? I haven't seen you before." I replied, "I'm a long-time employee. With thousands of staff in the company, it's normal for Vicky not to notice me." She asked, "What's your name?" I answered, "Sebastian." She nodded and asked, "Aren't you going for lunch?" I said, "I'm responsible for the presentation at the afternoon's new product seminar, so I'm reviewing the materials and won't be going." She pursed her lips, turned around and said as she walked out, "Then prepare well. I won't disturb you." Not even half an hour later, someone brought a high-end takeaway to me. I said, "You must have the wrong person. I didn't order any food." The person checked my name badge and said, "No mistake. I'm the special assistant to the CEO. The CEO personally asked me to buy this for you and said the meeting at 2:30 p.m. is postponed to 4 p.m. Take your time to eat." I opened the takeaway, 4 dishes and a soup. Is this how the company treats all employees, or is it special treatment? This woman is intriguing. At 4 p.m. the conference room was full, and Victoria was there too. She waved me over and whispered, "Did you like the food?" I replied, "Thank you, I did, but I don't like to owe favors. How much was the meal? I'll pay you back." She smiled and said, "No need. If you feel bad, just treat me to a meal in return." Was it my imagination, or did she deliberately lean in close when she spoke? Her warm, sweet breath on my neck made my heart race. Once everyone was gathered, I started presenting the product design, market research, and user feedback. When I finished, the manager looked a bit upset that I hadn't messed up. Victoria looked at me intently and said, "Very good. Prepare a complete report and submit it to the production department for testing." With Vicky's backing, the manager's planned criticisms faded away. After work, I went home, changed clothes, and went out to dinner with friends. Reuniting with old buddies naturally led to some drinking. I had quite a bit and planned to stay out late, but I couldn't keep up. I said goodbye to my friends and headed home. Just as I left the lounge, I bumped into someone. To prevent her from falling, I instinctively reached to steady her. The woman looked up at me with dazed eyes, her cheeks flushed. She asked, "Why are you here?" I explained I was out dining with friends. Half drunk, she mumbled, "Dining, huh? You owe me a meal too. Why didn't you invite me?" She seemed weak, leaning against me. I said, "You're this drunk and still thinking about that meal? Another day." She pouted, "No, I want to eat now. You promised to treat me. Don't try to weasel out." With that, she stopped a passing waiter and said, "Bring me some dishes, I want to eat." 20 minutes later, a table full of dishes was served, but she was passed out. I shook her gently. "Victoria, wake up and eat." She murmured, "So sleepy, don't touch me," swatting my hand away before collapsing into my lap. I quickly stood up, exasperated. "Of all places, why here?" she said. "I feel dizzy, I want to sleep," clinging to my neck with her warm, sweet breath in my ear, sending shivers through me. She passed out again, leaving me in a dilemma. She's too gorgeous to leave here, but taking her home wasn't an option. What if she saw my brother and found out I was covering for him at work? I didn't know her address, so I carried her to a hotel. Even drunk, she was restless, poking my ribs, pinching my arm, and mumbling nonsense. Her hands wandered where they shouldn't, testing my patience. Finally, she even complained, "So hard, not comfortable to touch," which made me snap, "Shut up or I'll leave you here." She whimpered, "Don't abandon me. I'm scared. I wondered if she had split personalities. Where had the poised, aloof goddess from earlier gone? In the hotel room, I tucked her in and turned to leave, when a bolt of lightning lit up the sky, illuminating the entire room. She suddenly opened her eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks. In her gaze, I saw fear and loneliness. As the thunder grew louder, she started sweating and clutched my shirt tighter, her nails digging into my skin. I shook her shoulder and asked Victoria, "Are you okay?" I wanted to get her a glass of water, but she suddenly hugged me tightly from behind. Her warm body pressed against mine, and I froze instantly. Was she not worried about being so close? She said, "Don't go. I'm scared. I'm afraid of thunder. That night my foster father killed my foster mother during a thunderstorm. There was so much blood. She died. She's gone." Hearing this, my heart softened a bit. I wanted her to lie back down, but as soon as I turned, another clap of thunder sounded. She curled into my arms, trembling, and said in a pitiful voice, "Please don't go." I wasn't sure what came over me, but I couldn't refuse. I said, "Okay, I won't go." I heard my heart pounding. Having drunk quite a bit, I didn't know when I fell into a hazy sleep. Half asleep, I felt a pain in my neck, something heavy on my chest. The next morning, I woke up alone in bed. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. It was already 10 in the morning. Damn, I was late. A female colleague getting water in the break room passed by my desk and exclaimed as if discovering something new, "Sebastian, are you in love? Are you with Tessa from the neighboring department?" I was bewildered and asked, "What nonsense are you talking about?" She pointed at my neck with a knowing look. Curious, I went to the restroom to check in the mirror and found a noticeable lipstick mark on my neck. I closed my eyes, recalling the pain in my neck last night. I thought it was a dream. I rushed to the 24th floor where the CEO's office was. Ignoring the assistant, I knocked directly on the CEO's door. A woman's voice said, "Come in." Behind the desk, a woman was engrossed in signing documents without even looking up. I threw off my jacket and unbuttoned my shirt. When she didn't respond, Victoria finally looked up. Her hand paused and her face started to blush, spreading from her ears to her neck. She asked, "What are you doing?" I stepped to her side, placed a foot on the chair's edge, and pointed at the lipstick mark on my neck with a smirk, asking, "Care to explain who left this on me?" My gaze was fixed on her. She tried to look away, but I firmly turned her head back. "Feeling shy now?" I asked. "Be honest, whose is this?" This woman, usually distant and hard to approach, couldn't feign innocence anymore. She changed her demeanor a bit defiant and said, "I kissed you. What are you going to do about it?" I was amused and asked, "You admit it so openly?" She rolled her eyes and said, "I didn't mean to. I was drunk and confused. I didn't do anything else, just a few kisses. And you're a man, it's not like you lost anything." What a brazen statement. I leaned on the chair, trapping her between my arms, and asked, "So Vicky, do you often kiss people when you're drunk? Do you think it's a small matter?" She bit her lip. "I haven't." She was about to argue when the door opened. It was that man who claimed to be the CEO's special assistant. He stammered, "Vicky, this is..." He stopped mid-sentence, staring at us in disbelief. Me, disheveled, pinning Victoria in her chair, and her blushing furiously. He quickly closed the door as if he never came. Realizing my actions were a bit excessive, I awkwardly stepped back and said, "Well, this time let's just forget it. Don't let it happen again." I thought that would end it, but she wasn't satisfied. "Wait," she said. "It was my fault for kissing you. I don't want you to think I'm unreasonable. I can compensate you." I asked, "What kind of compensation?" She thought for a moment, then looked up with a grievance as if she'd been wronged, biting her lip. "Fine, I'll let you kiss me back. Then we're even." I was speechless. Damn, how could she be so bold? My heart was racing uncontrollably. How could she offer something like that so easily? The thought of her randomly kissing others, then letting them kiss her back, made me uncomfortable. I asked, "Vicky, have you randomly kissed others before?" She snorted. "What are you thinking? I've never kissed anyone else." Last night was because I was drunk and scared of the thunder. A strange relief washed over me. Since she offered, I could take advantage of the situation. The next moment I held her neck and kissed her soft cheek. It felt amazing. No, I should have asked to kiss the same spot. I straightened my tie, cleared my throat and said, "All right, now we're even." Unsure if she was angry or embarrassed, her ears turned red again. I returned to my desk, feeling pleased, and continued working hard on a project for my brother. After 2 weeks of effort, I submitted the optimized plan, looking forward to the weekend for a break. But just before leaving, the CEO's assistant came to find me. He said, "Vicky wants you to come up." In the evening, when I was getting ready to attend the banquet with her, I asked rather discontentedly, "Why am I going? What use is a minor employee like me at such an event?" He replied, "Vicky said that the partners were very pleased with the optimized version of the product you designed. They will be attending tonight's banquet as well. Since you're in charge of this project now, it's better if you come along in case they have any questions." I was speechless, feeling the utter grind of the 9-to-5 life. After work, I waited for Victoria downstairs at the company. She looked me over from inside her car and commented, "Are you really going to the banquet dressed like that?" I asked. "Is there a problem?" Ever since I dressed too flamboyantly once and people thought I didn't look like an employee, I've been wearing my brother's clothes to work. It's usually fine, but for a banquet it's definitely not suitable. However, I played dumb. She simply said, "Get in the car, let's get you changed." I chuckled and said, "Will it be deducted from my salary? Because if so, I don't want it." Victoria snorted, "You really need that little bit of money?" I laughed. "You're the boss. You should know how much your employees make." She rolled her eyes at me again. Victoria took me to a high-end boutique. After changing clothes and coming out, she raised an eyebrow and commented approvingly, "Looking sharp. If you wore this to work, you'd attract quite a few admirers." I moved closer to her, put an arm around her waist, and asked, "Have I attracted you yet?" Her cheeks turned crimson instantly, but she pushed me away. Feigning calmness, "Behave yourself. Don't be a flirt. Men should have self-respect, or they'll attract the wrong kind of attention." The banquet was a swirl of toasts and clinking glasses. Everyone there was a notable figure in New York City. Luckily, I hadn't made any public appearances since returning, so nobody knew me. Conversations with the partners went smoothly, and after an hour we shook hands and toasted, both sides satisfied, save for the signing of the agreement. After they left, Victoria looked at me, puzzled, and asked, "You seem quite comfortable in such settings." I smiled and said, "That's because of you, Vicky. Your presence gives me confidence." Just then a man approached us with a glass of champagne. Recognizing him, I turned to leave. The man said, "You're Vicky from the Lu Corporation, right?" "Hello, I'm Jason, Vice President of the Chen Corporation in Southern City. Nice to meet you." Victoria clung to my arm, preventing my escape. She said, "Mr. Jiang, we're very much looking forward to collaborating with your company. This is our product designer, Sebastian. If you have any questions or requests about our products, feel free to contact him." Jason turned to smile and extend a friendly hand to me, but his smile froze on his face. He stammered, "Pre-President?" I quickly interjected, "In any case, Mr. Jiang, we look forward to working with your company." Jason gritted his teeth, patted my shoulder, and said, "There will be opportunities. Do your best." I seized the opportunity to tell Vicky I needed to use the restroom, and as I left, I gave Jason a look. It took him a full 5 minutes to finally arrive. He asked, "What are you doing here, pretending to be some undercover agent? And since when did you become an employee of the Lu Corporation?" I sighed. "My brother got injured and can't go to work, so I'm filling in for him for a few days." He asked, "You mean your twin brother? Aren't you worried people will recognize you?" I replied, "People who don't know us well can't tell us apart. Even our mom used to mix us up when we were kids." He responded, "They don't recognize you now, but since you're back in New York City, eventually you'll have to deal with Victoria. Aren't you afraid of the awkwardness when you're exposed? And she's Tessa's cousin. It's not right to deceive her." I said, I know, I'll find a chance to come clean with Victoria, just don't expose me. The Shu family and my family have been friends for generations. Tessa and I grew up together. She's a bit wild, her eyes light up whenever she sees a handsome guy. Every man who's interacted with her says she's pretty but talks too much. Jason was my college roommate. We got along well and were inseparable. Through me, Jason and Tessa became friends. The three of us went abroad to study together. After graduation, Jason worked with me, while Tessa returned to Boston, becoming the chief designer at SHU Corporation. The Chen Corporation used to be in Boston too, but they moved their headquarters to New York City 4 years ago to expand their business, which is why I came back. Returning to the banquet, I scanned the crowd for Victoria. Not far away, she looked displeased, trying to handle a conversation with a middle-aged man. I asked Jason, "Who is that?" He replied, "That's Roland, a former CEO of the Liu Corporation, now the vice president and Victoria's cousin." I had never met Roland, but I had heard plenty about his scandals from Tessa. 4 years ago, while still CEO of the Liu Corporation, Roland forced himself on a female employee, driving her to mental instability. When the matter blew up, Roland tried to buy her silence, but the girl was strong-willed and ended up jumping off a building. Because of this scandal, the Liu Corporation's reputation took a nosedive, forcing Roland to step down as CEO and serve time. The old man of the Liu family had no choice. Under the circumstances, the only option was to let the only granddaughter take the CEO position of the Liu Corporation. Over the past 4 years, under Victoria's leadership, the Liu Corporation finally rid itself of the negative impact brought by her cousin, and its performance became a leader in the industry. However, just at this moment, Roland was released from prison. No one knew what Mr. Liu was thinking, but he actually let Roland come back as the vice president. Over there, Roland and Victoria had already fallen out. He gritted his teeth and said, "The CEO position was meant to be mine. You're just a wild girl from nowhere, a mere woman with no qualifications to inherit the Liu Corporation. Sooner or later, I'll take back everything that belongs to me." Victoria, however, replied sharply, "Brother, if I'm not qualified to inherit the Liu Corporation, then what makes you a convict who has served time and has a criminal record any more qualified? I think maybe you are more suited for prison. How about I send you back in for a few more years, and when you've learned your lesson, Grandpa and I will bring you out again. How does that sound?" Roland raised his hand to slap Victoria, but in the next second I grabbed his hand and stepped in front of Victoria, saying, "Vice President Liu, this is a brand event hosted by our partners. Your behavior will bring trouble to the corporation." He gritted his teeth and said, "Who do you think you are, daring to stop me?" I smiled and said, "I'm an employee of the Liu Corporation. Maintaining the corporation's reputation is my duty as an employee." He asked, "A mere employee dares to teach me how to act? You're fired." I pointed to Victoria and smiled. "The head of the corporation is here. What makes you, a vice president, think you can throw your weight around?" He gritted his teeth and said, You. At this moment, the event host came over. Roland couldn't continue to lose his temper, and the onlookers dispersed. Victoria greeted the host and then left with me. As we were leaving, I noticed a fleeting cold smile on Roland's face, which made me feel uneasy. Sure enough, on the way back, Victoria's body began to heat up. Having been in the business world for many years, I had seen such dirty tricks before. It was obvious that someone had drugged her. I said, "Hold on, I'll take you to the hospital." She bit her lip and said, "No, it's too late. We're almost at my house. Just take me home first. A nap should make me feel better." The car stopped in the courtyard of Victoria's villa. I fished out the keys from her and inserted them into the lock, only to find that the villa door was not locked. I gently pushed the door open and noticed a man's footprint at the entrance. I immediately stepped back out, gently closed the door, and quickly drove away from her villa with her in the car. After tidying up the place, I held her and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, before Victoria woke up, I returned to Sincere's place to find Jason. I asked, "Tell me, what did you find at Victoria's house last night?" Jason, still a bit shaken, replied, Luckily, you were cautious enough not to bring anyone inside. There were 5 men and 1 woman in her house. When we got there, they were already high. The scene was indescribable. Our people also spotted a few reporters with cameras nearby. It must have been Roland's doing. Just as I suspected, the drug Victoria was given last night couldn't be unrelated to Roland. Roland's reputation was already ruined because he was jailed for coercion, and now he wants to tarnish Victoria's name. If Victoria had gone home alone last night with that many people in her house after being drugged, what she would have experienced is unimaginable. The reporters lying in wait would have snapped a few photos, ruining Victoria's life. What a scumbag, doing such a thing to his own sister. I thought that after revealing my true identity to Victoria last night, she would have something to say to me. I had prepared myself for her various reactions. But when I returned to the company, Victoria didn't mention it at all. I was puzzled. What did she mean by this? By noon, I couldn't hold back any longer and ran to the 24th floor to find her. I asked, "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Victoria's eyes were evasive. I asked again, "Are you sure you have nothing to say to me?" She bit her lip and said, "About last night, I wasn't in my right mind. It was my initiative. If you don't want to take responsibility, I won't force you." Her voice grew softer and she avoided my gaze. I was perplexed and asked, "Is that all you want to say?" She pouted and said, "Fine, it seems you really don't want to take responsibility." I was speechless and said, "Is this really about taking responsibility or not? She doesn't even remember me revealing my identity to her last night. Should I repeat it now?" While I was pondering how to explain, Victoria got a bit angry at my reaction and said, "Then do whatever you want." I quickly tried to placate her. "You misunderstood me. I will definitely take responsibility for you. You were not sober last night, but I was. Of course, I will take responsibility." Victoria's expression brightened and she pouted. "Then how do you plan to take responsibility?" I leaned in and kissed the corner of her lips. I said, "Although last night was an accident, I really like you, Miss Victoria. I'm formally asking you now, would you be my girlfriend?" She complained, "You're confessing empty-handed?" I explained. "From last night until now, I've been worried sick about you being angry. I didn't have time to prepare a gift. I'll make it up to you later." Victoria was finally satisfied. She then remembered something and said, "By the way, the police called me earlier saying someone broke into my house last night. What happened?" After I told her about last night, Victoria was puzzled and said, "The wine was given to me by a waiter. I can understand that the waiter was bribed by Roland. What I don't understand is why Jason suddenly went to my house with the police and doctors." I replied, "I sent him there." She asked, "You sent him and he just went? Are you two very close? Wait a minute. Wasn't last night the first time you met?" I rubbed my temples and said, "Yes, we are quite close, but I don't know how to explain this to you right now." "I'm sorry, Victoria. I lied to you about other things too. Actually, I'm not." Victoria interrupted angrily, "Are you not serious about being with me?" I quickly denied, "Of course not. I am serious, but Just then my brother called me. He said, "Bro, I took off the cast today. The doctor said I can come back for one more checkup next week, and if everything's fine, I can return to work." After hanging up the phone, I wanted to continue explaining, but Victoria spoke first. "If you don't want to say it now, then don't. Tell me when you're ready. As long as you're not deceiving my feelings, I don't mind other things." "All right then. I'll wait until my brother returns to work and then explain everything clearly." With the restructuring of the company, many employees were let go. Once the layoff list was finalized, I no longer had to clock in for my brother every day. I took a week off for him and returned to Sincere during the day to handle my own affairs. Victoria was also very busy these days, and we hadn't seen each other for several days, only keeping in touch by phone. One day, after finishing my work, I went to Victoria's villa to find her. It wasn't until 2 a.m. that she came back. I asked, "Why so late?" She pouted and said, "Recently that scumbag Roland has been causing a lot of trouble behind my back. I have to resolve the funding issue as soon as possible. The new energy vehicle project must not be signed by him first. I asked, puzzled. Why is he dead set on this project? The company is so big he can just secure any other project to establish himself, can't he? She said, You don't understand. My grandfather never wanted me to take over. 4 years ago, when Roland had his incident, Grandpa had no choice but to let me step in. Now that Roland is back, Grandpa wants me to step aside for him. But don't make it too harsh. Just say that whoever between me and Roland can solve the funding issue for the new energy project first will get the shares. The shares under my name are left by my parents, only 30%. Roland's shares also account for 30%. Grandpa still holds 10%. If he gives them to Roland, he will become the largest shareholder. By then, even if the board wants to keep me, they can't. I gently touched her face and asked, Why's your grandpa dissatisfied with you? Roland isn't even worthy of your little toe. Anyone with eyes can see through your grandpa's foolishness. Victoria buried her head in my chest and laughed bitterly. When I was 3, I was kidnapped. It wasn't until I was 15 that I returned to the family. My parents couldn't focus on their careers while searching for me, traveling everywhere. When they finally got a lead on my whereabouts, they drove overnight only to get into a car accident and both died. My grandpa believed I brought misfortune to my family and never liked me. After my parents passed away, he didn't even want to bring me back. It was my uncle who fetched me. My uncle originally wanted me to live with him in City B, but my parents had left their shares in the company to me. To reclaim my parents' shares, I stayed with the family. I had heard from Tessa that her cousin was kidnapped as a child, but I didn't know she had suffered so much. We embraced each other on the couch. I touched her face, then her neck. You've lost weight in just a few days. I feel so sorry for you. I asked, If Sincere joins the project, will it be stable? She tucked her hair behind her ear and nodded. Of course, Sincere has a strong cash flow, and we have the technology and talent. If we can collaborate, it will be a win-win. I have reached out to Sincere, but it's been 2 months since I sent the letter of intent and there's been no response. I only found out recently that 2 letters of intent were sent to Sincere, one from Roland and one from me. After reviewing the proposals and project materials, I must admit Roland's offer is more generous. However, his business ethics are questionable, and partnering with him, while profitable, carries significant risks. A single misstep could ruin everything, not just financially but reputationally too. My offer might not be as lucrative, but it's safe and reliable. Sincere doesn't need to make a huge profit right now. The key is to establish a solid foundation and long-term partnership in City C. I'm a good fit for that. I discussed this with the shareholders today, and they were inclined to move forward with the collaboration. But how should I reveal my identity to her? I said, Meet Jason at Sincere tomorrow afternoon. He won't turn you away this time. Victoria looked puzzled. How can you be so sure? I replied, You'll find out tomorrow. I plan to reveal my identity to her the next day, come what may. I even called Tessa over from City B. With her around, Victoria might be more willing to listen to my explanation. But I didn't expect my unlucky brother to mess things up. The next morning, while Victoria went to work, I was still in bed when my brother bombarded me with messages. Bro, what did you do to our cold-hearted CEO? She smiled at me this morning, and in the elevator she asked me to get closer. Bro, reply now. She called me to her office. Am I doomed? I jumped out of bed. Damn it, my cover was blown. I texted him back, I'm coming over. She's your sister-in-law now, so keep your distance. He replied with a series of question marks. Bro, what are you talking about? Whose sister-in-law? When I arrived, my brother was sitting awkwardly on the sofa in the CEO's office. Victoria's gaze shifted from him to me. She frowned and asked, Which one of you is the imposter? I kicked my brother and said, Weren't you supposed to return to work next week? Why are you here early? He replied, Big bro, I was afraid of losing my pay for taking too long off. So I decided to come back as soon as I felt better. But as soon as I entered the elevator, Vicky said some weird things to me, asked why I wasn't still sleeping, and why I didn't come with her. She even tried to kiss me. I was baffled. Victoria interrupted coldly. "One of you better explain." I confessed. "He's Sebastian. I'm his twin brother, Sincere. After our parents divorced, he stayed with Dad, and I went with Mom to our grandfather's place, hence the different surname." Victoria stomped her foot in anger. "You liar," she accused. I explained, "I didn't mean to deceive you. My brother injured his leg and couldn't come to work. He was worried about being laid off if he took leave, so I filled in for him for a few days." She said, "It's one thing to fill in for your brother at the beginning, but why did you keep lying after we got together?" I replied, "I didn't. I told you in the car that night that my name is Sincere." Victoria's eyes reddened with disbelief. Just as I was about to take out my phone, I saw my brother's anxious face. Upon hearing the shocking news, I immediately pushed him and said, "Get out, get out, get out." I kicked my brother out and played the recording from that night in the car on speaker. In the recording, I asked, "What's my name?" She said, "Your name is Sebastian." I replied, "No, I'm not Sebastian. My name is Sincere. Remember, I'm Sincere. The person with you tonight is Sincere." She said, "Okay, Sincere. You are Sincere. Kiss me, Sincere." The recording ended there. Victoria didn't know whether to be angry or shocked. She trembled and said, "You're awful. How could you record that? Do you have videos of us too?" I said, "How else could I prove I wasn't lying? You completely forgot the next day." I wanted to explain, but you kept interrupting me. It dragged on until now. I genuinely like you. Ever since we got together, I've wanted to clear things up, but never found the right opportunity. I'm sorry, I never intended to deceive you. If you're angry, hit me, scold me, I'll accept it." Victoria asked, "So your last name is Sincere and you're so close with Jason. You must be the new president of the Sincere Corporation." I replied, "Yes, it's me." Then she really did hit me. Victoria's eyes reddened as she punched my chest several times and bit my arm hard. In her frustration, she even bit my lip. I held her in my arms, letting her vent. Somehow, her biting turned into kissing, and then she ended up straddling my lap. When she started to fumble with my belt, I stopped her and said, "Victoria, this is the office. Anyone could walk in at any moment." She nonchalantly replied, "Let them come in. What's wrong with me being intimate with my boyfriend? It's not illegal. Are you dodging taxes?" I said helplessly, No, of course not, but I can't let you go through this trouble. I'll do it myself." She haughtily replied, "This time, I want to be on top." After a while, she suddenly became frustrated and said, "How do I do this? It's so hard I can't." I laughed and quickly got up, saying, "It's okay, miss. I'll take care of it." Victoria grumbled, "If you can't please me, you're out." I was speechless. I grabbed her waist and kissed her deeply, saying, "Let me remind you, it's very dangerous to upset a man at times like this, darling." She mumbled, "You." Half a month later, the collaboration between the Sincere Corporation and the Victoria Group was officially established. Although Mr. Victoria didn't like Victoria, he kept his word and transferred the shares to her. Roland was furious and had a big argument with Mr. Victoria. He drove out and got into a car accident, becoming comatose. With the project on track, Victoria and I finally had some free time and decided to renovate the villa. To our surprise, upon opening the door, we saw my brother and Tessa making out passionately in the living room. I almost fainted. What was going on? That green tea Tessa dared to make a move on my brother. I gritted my teeth and said, "Tessa, how dare you go after my brother?" My brother embarrassingly said, "Bro, I like Tessa." Tessa snorted and said to me, "Shut up, you tricked my sister, so isn't it fair that I went after your brother?" Tessa and I cursed each other's ancestors, while Victoria and my brother sat on the couch eating sunflower seeds. Family members, who do I turn to for justice? Extra story, Victoria. In my memory, I knew I wasn't my parents' biological child. My real parents were elsewhere, but I was too young to remember where my home was. Later, the village kids started calling me a wild child bought by my parents. When I fought back, they bullied me. My foster father not only didn't help me but scolded me harshly. At first, my foster parents were quite good to me, but later my foster father started gambling and drinking. When he got drunk, he would beat me in territory, didn't allow me to sleep here, and they started beating me as soon as I arrived. I was weak and desperate, nearly beaten to death. Just when I was about to give up struggling, a boy in a basketball jersey threw a basketball at the beggars attacking me. I was so badly beaten that I could barely open my eyes, but through the slits I could vaguely see his flamboyant face. He fought them off, and I noticed a conspicuous red mole on his left thumb. When I woke up in the hospital, my uncle was crying by my bedside, and my cousin blamed herself for not taking better care of me. I looked around but couldn't see the boy. It was such a pity I didn't even know his name. Later, I learned that after my parents died, my grandfather never intended to bring me back to the family. If it weren't for my uncle, I might have rotted in that small village for the rest of my life. I didn't live with my uncle because my parents left all their property to me in their will. I couldn't let others take advantage of that. I had to return. Eventually, Roland's scandal of forcing female employees was exposed, and he drove one to suicide. I used the public pressure to bring him down by finding evidence of his misconduct. My grandfather had no choice but to let me take the position. On my first day at the company, I saw the face I had been thinking about for years, but it seemed different from my memory. No longer as vibrant and bold. But that's okay, people change, right? So many years had passed, and I was no longer the same person either. Although he didn't quite meet the job requirements, I still kept him around. Finally, I learned his name, Sebastian. I tried to get close to him, wanting to ask if he remembered saving a little girl who was nearly beaten to death years ago. But he seemed to have no memory of it at all. I was disappointed, but couldn't bring myself to disturb him further. One day, an unexpected event occurred. The elevator malfunctioned, and it was just the two of us inside. Standing next to him, I noticed his hands were clean. That's when it hit me why he seemed different from back then. He wasn't the same person. He didn't have the red mole on his left thumb. How could I have forgotten that? I had mistaken his identity. He just looked very similar. Suddenly, I felt a bit happy. I looked into whether Sebastian had any brothers, but his records showed he was from a single-parent family, and his father worked in a confidential government position. There was no way to find out more. Unwilling to give up, I asked Sebastian during a work report if he had any siblings. He said it was just him and his dad. I began to doubt my own memory and let the matter rest. Unexpectedly, after I gave up, things took a surprising turn. One day, as I walked to the elevator, I saw that flamboyant face again, identical to Sebastian's, but with a completely different vitality. I couldn't believe it, but I just knew the person before me wasn't Sebastian. As the elevator doors closed, I looked back at him. He brazenly met my gaze, unlike Sebastian's evasive eyes, and even commented on how fair my skin was. I was overjoyed, thinking that my brother must have taken a liking to me. I was so happy that I couldn't focus on work the entire morning. At lunchtime, I couldn't resist running over to Sebastian's desk to confirm. He wasn't bothered by my presence, lounging in his chair, propping his head with one hand, and scrutinizing me. The red mole on his left thumb was so striking, I was almost giddy enough to rush forward and kiss him. It was so wonderful to finally see him. That evening, I secretly followed his car to his residence. I had checked Sebastian's address, and they lived in the same place, so they really were brothers. I couldn't understand why Sebastian had lied to me. Feeling good, I went out drinking for the first time in my life. I accidentally drank too much and half-conscious saw him again. Summoning some mysterious courage, I wanted to talk to him, to ask if he remembered saving a little girl years ago. But when I got close, I lost my nerve and, emboldened by alcohol, asked him to buy me dinner, but I was too tired and fell asleep. He took me to a hotel, and coincidentally, there was a thunderstorm that night. My old habit kicked in, and I clung to him, not letting him leave. When I woke up, I found him holding me fast asleep. My heart raced and he kept pulling me closer to his chest. I couldn't help but kiss him. To my surprise, he demanded an explanation the next day. I was both shy and inexplicably happy. I knew he wasn't Sebastian, but I still didn't know his name. Later, when Roland drugged me, he finally revealed it. I remembered it all but was afraid to confront him, fearing he would leave me. I wanted to wait for him to confess, but was also scared that once we talked, he would disappear. So I pretended not to know anything, but I got too carried away. One day in the elevator, I didn't notice Sebastian had come back to work, and I wanted to be close to him. I mistook him for someone else and my cover was blown. Sebastian, that idiot, called him right in front of me. Fine. If they can't keep up the act, I'll continue mine. I didn't expect him to be the new CEO of the Chen Group, but so what? I've made up my mind about him. He better not think he can escape. I'll just pretend to be angry, make a fuss, and then let him coax me. I'll forgive him in no time and be happy again.